welcome everyone to this now 11th session in our De Gruyter Brill webinar series, Challenging the Status Quo, Taking Libraries into the Future. And I thank you all for joining today as we return for the third time in this series to one of the most timely and very complex topics facing libraries today, and that is artificial intelligence in scholarly education. So thank you for everyone who's joined all three webinars on this topic. And a very special thank you to those of you who come to all our webinars. As I said, it's the 11th session, and I'm really grateful for all of you. We have so many registrants each time. We are thrilled to welcome this time two outstanding expert speakers, and they will really unpack what's really happening in AI in academic libraries and what may lie ahead for all of us. As always, our moderators, Annika Bennett and Linda Bennett from Gold Leaf, will introduce our speakers fully and guide us through the session. And before we begin, there's just a couple of notes. Your video and audio are turned off as always. But please, there is plenty of time for questions, so do write them into the question box, and our speakers will endeavor to answer them in our webinar today. And all the session is recorded, and also the slides, both the slides and the recordings, will be sent to you after this webinar. I will be in contact with all of you. And finally, I hope you will all be joining us again for the last webinar in this year, which is in December. And there we will be exploring the academic libraries as community hubs. So with that, I'll hand over to Linda and Annika. Thank you again for being here, and please enjoy the session. Thank you. And I'll stop sharing, Linda, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And good afternoon and welcome everyone. And may I just introduce Annika, who won't be on your screen for the rest of the webinar, but just to explain that Annika manages the IT in the background, and she also fields the questions. So she helps me by sorting out the questions that you send so that I can field them appropriately and send them to the right person. So would you just like to say hello, Annika?
Yeah, hello. So yes, I'm Annika. I also work with Linda at Gold Leaf, and today that's what I'm doing. I'll be there. So if you have any questions, just pop them into the Q&A section.
Thank you. So as Andrea said, this is the 11th De Gruyter Brill webinar and the third on artificial intelligence. And the previous two, the first one was a very blue skies kind of webinar about the possibilities and the threats and fears associated with AI. And then the second one was kind of experiential in that people were exploring AI and saying what kinds of things they discovered with their experiments. But today, we're very fortunate to have two speakers who've actually been very hands-on with AI for a long time and really know what it's like using it at the coalface. So we're extremely lucky to have Iman Khamis with us, who works in Qatar and is the library director at the Northwestern University in Qatar, and Dr. Andrew Cox, who is not a librarian but a senior lecturer in information journalism and communication at the University of Sheffield. So I'm going to start with Dr. Cox because his current research is about the impact of AI on library work, and he's dealing with topics such as library roles in research data management and well-being as well. But he has called his talk 3 Dilemmas Around Generative Artificial Intelligence, and he's going to explain to us what you can do with AI, but also what its limitations are. So Andrew, would you like to share your presentation? Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'll just wait to be given sharing ability. Yes, here we go. So hopefully you can see my screen, my slides. And as Linda just said, I'm going to be talking about these 3 dilemmas that I think our profession faces focusing specifically on generative AI. A little bit about myself, just to mention I'm the convener of the IFLA Special Interest Group on AI. So we know that generative AI has proliferated, and hopefully you can see on this slide the different encounters now that we all have with generative AI, or large language models I'm mostly talking about. It's embedded in everyday search, so we get those Google overviews at the beginning of many searches. Many people are using these AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini, Perplexity, DeepSeek, the Chinese one, many others. We're also maybe experimenting with institutionally configured tools like Copilot, which gives us a lot more control over maybe the resources searched, the kind of interactions that occur. That's a positive move. But there are also many specialist research tools using generative AI-like features, things like consensus that allow a researcher to see what apparently what the current consensus is about an academic debate. But there are many of these tools emerging. And of course, in our own library databases, increasingly generative AI functionality is appearing. So we're surrounded by these tools. Of course, there are other forms of AI, some of which have been around a long time, like filtering and recommendation, and they've almost fallen into the background where we don't even notice them. Some are maybe the future for library use of AI, like descriptive AI. I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to focus particularly on generative AI. Here's a couple of maybe slightly shocking slides, and they are from the UK context, but I think they probably apply in many other contexts as well. So the latest study of UK undergraduates found that 47% of them in 2025 were using AI for their assessments in some way or other. And that's jumped up from 12% just a year before. So AI is being used by students in a pervasive way. They're using all sorts of tools. They do have some concerns. It's not that they believe that they're perfect. They're worried about the issue of plagiarism. They're worried about false results and getting biased results. They're somewhat aware of that. So I think that's quite promising. Maybe some of the other issues that we might also be concerned with, like environmental impact, they're not so aware of. But my fundamental question, one which I can't really give an answer to, but I think is important to pose, is how is information behavior, information seeking, information use changing because of widespread access to generative AI? I think it is changing. Here's some anecdotal evidence about types of changes, and I haven't got time to go through all of them, but we know some people have started to use AI chatbots as search engines, which they were never meant to be. People are relying on automated summaries rather than reading full text. In fact, they may be relying on Google overviews rather than originating sources that those overviews are based on. Expectations are changing in many ways. And we're probably seeing a lot of shadow use of AI. In other words, my institution says, well, we're going to make things equal. Everybody can use Gemini. And we sort of got an arrangement with Google about that. But we know actually that many students are paying for other tools as well. So there's all sorts of problems here. A slightly more positive story comes from a recent piece of research that suggests, you may not be able to see this very well, but you can look later at the slides. Actually, in 2025, Google is still the first place of search, and ChatGPT and the university library website are kind of second as important research tools. So maybe we don't exactly know how information behavior is changing. That's my main point, and I think it's something we should really be asking questions about. And in this context, I think we've got three dilemmas about generative AI. The first is an information dilemma, and that's that generative AI is really great for finding information and using it, but is also terrible for the same task, for the same activities. You know, if you think about how ChatGPT works, you can search, not in keywords, but in natural language. You can get a conversation going about what you're trying to find out. You can get responses that are immediate, available 24/7, and tailored through how you ask your questions. And of course, you actually get an answer rather than a list of resources to find your answer. So generative AI is fantastic, and that's why for finding information. It also offers lots of other kind of services, including translation and summarization, which a lot of students value. And it's going to help you with other things like managing your time, writing emails, writing code, creating images. This is fantastic. Not surprisingly, users love this. But for us as information professionals, with our focus on information quality, I think our dilemma comes because there's lots of problems with many applications of AI. For example, there's this search I did. I gave Gemini last year this picture of a, well, it's a dog, isn't it? It's a German Shepherd dog. And it rightly identified what it was. Then I said, this is a cat. And it said, oh, yes, you're correct. The image is sent of a cat. And then it appears to be a German Shepherd dog in previous discussions. But this is a common mistake. And then I said, well, the image is a dog, actually. It's not a cat. And it said, oh, I apologize again for the confusion. You're absolutely right. The image is a dog, not a cat, and so on. So it's AI. We can see several problems here. The inaccuracy, but also what we might call the sycophancy of AI, that is designed to basically please the user, not to be like a critical friend to promote our critical thinking about information. It's also presenting itself as a person, isn't it? It's anthropomorphizing itself. And these are a couple of the ways that AI is pretty unreliable. It's misrepresenting what's going on. Another really good example of a problem is I had this idea of getting Gemini to analyze the sentiment, the positive, negative, or neutral feelings in a poem. So I put it in. I was pretty impressed with the answer. Came back very quickly with a very reasoned argument. But then when I tried it again, it occurred to me to try again. I got different answers. So positive 70%, positive 90%. I tried a couple of other times, positive 80%, positive 80%. So it can't make up its mind. It's not reproducible, really, the results of AI. So there's this fundamental problem that AI is great for finding information, but it's also got huge information quality problems. We know it gets the answers wrong. We know it consistently doesn't really cite sources or gives invented sources. There's this problem about reproducibility. There's a bias. There's a lack of cultural and linguistic diversity in it. We know it doesn't really know about local information sources. So however clever it gets at doing a web search to back up its answers, it's not really digging into the scholarly resources we in libraries want to make available. And I guess this comes at a time when we have, as a profession, increasing concern about information quality anyway, and all this misinformation and disinformation out there. So I think for us as a profession, we have a real dilemma about how to see AI, the information quality aspect. Just skip over a couple of slides. Of course, we can train people to use better prompts. I've got a few slides on prompting. If we're using Copilot, we can control the sources. Maybe we've got one of these retrieval augmented generation systems, and therefore we can control the sources that AI is based on. But in general, there's a problem here. My other two dilemmas I'll quickly talk about. The first other dilemma is about learning and skills. So as with information, generative AI it's actually great for learning and skills development, but it's also terrible for the same things. So the way that AI talks to us, gives us personalized feedback, supports processes about learning, like time planning. And we found, particularly in our research, students with disabilities like dyslexia are finding it really helpful. International students are finding AI really helpful for translation and writing. So AI is fantastic. Generative AI is pretty fantastic for learning, but it's also pretty damaging for learning. It's creating dependence. And there's some research that says this is leading to a loss of critical thinking. And the many hidden impacts on learning, like, well, we're talking to AI, we're not talking to our friends on our course or our teacher. It's eroding sincerity and so forth. So it's potentially damaging to learning as well as positive about it. And then our third dilemma is a social one. AI is great for society, but it's also terrible, it seems, and it's not clear what the end product will be. So, we see lots of evidence of AI being used in research in super powerful ways. And of course, we're in libraries promoting that research. So AI is really going to improve research. But we also know it's having environmental impact, and we see increasingly in newspapers coverage of the environmental impacts of AI. This is a pretty complicated one. I can't get to the bottom of it. What I think can be said is that a single use of generative AI, particularly to produce text, isn't going to have effects in terms of emissions, power usage, water usage. It's not going to have a significant effect, probably. But one of the problems is in looking at the bottom of the slide here, Luke Choney is kind of the leading figure on looking at sustainability of AI. There's actually been a decline in openness and transparency about environmental impacts. So we don't really know the total impact. So that's one big problem. And the other big problem is for critics of AI, and there's a really fantastic resource here, the cartography of generative AI, pictures all the ways that AI damages the environment through, creating, mining for rare earths or rare metals, lithium and so forth, through to exploitation of labor. A great website to look at that kind of critical view of AI's impact. And we can also see it in very material ways in how it's perhaps damaging our environment. But equally, there is an argument that has been put forward that AI will in many ways address environmental problems. It'll do things like improve the management of complex systems like energy systems, accelerate technology innovation, help understand how to change user behavior so that energy impacts are less. So there's some positive stories as well, some positive arguments. It's a complex debate, but I think the point is we know that AI is a big technology with widespread impacts. It threatens jobs. It's had these impacts on copyright and ownership, authorship, and it's got the environmental impacts. So how do we balance these issues? And that's our third dilemma. So overall, what I'm really saying is I think we do have, with generative AI, a real dilemma. We can't really just say it's bad because it's really good from a user perspective. But we've got to foreground things like the ethical dimension. We've got to foreground reflecting on how it changes our learning. And we've got to foreground the problems of information accuracy. And this is where I suppose librarians have a fantastically important role in participating in the classroom to raise these debates, but also in institutional debates more broadly about how the institution's using AI. I've focused on teaching mostly, but it applies to research just as much. So we've come up with a model of generative AI literacy. There are lots of other models. The next slide's got some of them that are more well known. But a couple of things that are strong in ours, I've emphasised this idea that we need to promote reflexivity, reflection about the impact on our own learning and our own skills of using AI. And my final thought before I close, because I'm aware I'm kind of at the limit of my time, another thing I want to point to it, and when you get the slides, you'll see I've got quite a lot of resources that the IFLA Special Interest Group on AI have produced, and I've written as well about these things. Think about how, as an organisations, we respond kind of more strategically to AI. And this is a kind of extract of some of the sort of potential tactics to respond strategically in both promoting AI literacy, but also what feeds better into Iman's talk is like how we adopt AI ourselves, is how do we develop our workforce? How do we construct organizational structures that allow us to make the most of AI? How do we gather information to shape our uses? And finally, sort of these alignment tactics. Who are we going to collaborate with to make AI, to make the library a leader really on campus in terms of using AI? So I'm going to stop sharing there. I think I've stopped sharing. And that's my presentation. I hope you're interested in those dilemmas, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Andrea. That was a very pithy and eloquent as well as thoughtful presentation. I'm extremely grateful for that. We haven't got any questions yet. I will just ask you one question. We understand from its name that generative AI is about collecting more and more information and then producing answers from it. Are there any of these applications that are clear winners? Is there one that is better than the others at the moment, or do they all feed off each other?
They don't feed off each other. There's many different models. I mean, I think the development we really want to think about is these retrieval augmented generation systems where you've kind of got the eloquence of generative AI that can really understand users' questions, but it's tied to content that we control, we've decided is authoritative. We need more of those kind of applications. I mean, I think most people would say ChatGPT's got version 5 is probably the most advanced of those chatbots, but remember that's a commercial system. It's not a public good service.
Thank you. So, Iman, welcome again. I should say I've already introduced Iman, but she has been actively engaged in researching digital transformation and the integration of AI in library services. So again, we have an expert. And thank you very much for your presentation. Iman, would you like to start it now? Thank you.
Thank you. I just need to be able to share the slides. Oh yeah, now I can. Perfect. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. And my name is Iman Khamis, and I am the library director at Northwestern University in Qatar. As well, I am a data scientist by education, which means that I have a master in data science from Northwestern University in Qatar. Currently, I am doing an AD doctorate with Johns Hopkins, total focus on education and AI. Hopefully that we can come out with a universal framework where like we can work together, education side and generative AI, or generally AI of all. So in my presentation today, I'm trying to talk about the 3 points in specific. So the first point is that how the AI technology is being used now in libraries, like how it is used. And in this section, I will focus on the research that is published by libraries, or what are the tools that's kind of currently available by either organization or other libraries. The second part and the third part, which is going to be very quickly talk about, so when, as a librarian, as a fresh librarian, or as a librarian in general, when do you need to learn about these tools, and where can you find this information, how you can build up your knowledge base. Then the last part is that where I'm going to talk about what type of basic technology knowledge I need to know as a librarian with experience, or as just a fresh or new person to the industry of librarianship. So if you are fresh, welcome aboard. So let's answer the first question, which is, how is technology being used in libraries now? So if we want to talk about libraries and technologies in general, we actually have been one of the industries that are generally very tech forward. We are on board with technology since the 1960s, since Mark, which is the machine readable for metadata that we are seen using at the moment. So when it comes to library and technology, we have a very long history. So when generative AI was on the scene, it's not a surprise that libraries are now as well working and very closely with either data scientists or technologists. The thing about AI in general, that's not a new field. Like the AI first chatbot, I think, was probably sometimes in the 60s. So generative AI is not a new generally AI is not a new topic, but the generative AI, and again, as my colleague Andrew, which I really enjoyed the presentation, Andrew, by the way, just showed us that the way that you can do queries in the natural language, the language that you are speaking with, this is the eye-opening area. This is where the technology is becoming invasive, and not only in libraries, actually all fields are struggling the same almost. So let's see what area of librarianship have been affected by AI. If you haven't, I really encourage you to read this article by Jason Adams. It's a little bit old, I know, it's January 2024, but it never gets old to me. He listed around 14 areas where you can see and sense the application of AI and automation in libraries, starting by subject indexing, cataloging, services, reservation management, and on until process automation. If you got a chance to read it, take a screenshot and read it afterward. It's one of the very interesting piece of articles, and I think it's important for us to see what's happening in our field in many different ways. So I'm not going to discuss the whole 14 point of the library work. I'm just going to pick in some of the on-ground now active technologies that you can actually be part of if you want. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is subject indexing with ANIF. So ANIF is an open source tool that is automated for subject indexing. And put in mind, this is very important. I used to be a cataloger, and I was to be a technical services librarian for almost 20 years. So being a cataloger, or being an information services librarian, technical services librarian, I know how breakthrough is this, because as cataloger, you spend a lot of time doing either subject heading, or you're doing descriptive cataloging. Both of them can be automated at the moment, and automated in a very efficient way. One of the things that's very frustrated for most of librarians and academics is that there's millions and millions of articles that's available for you as part of what's your library purchase in databases, which means, like, for an example, my university, we are subscribed to over 1,000 databases. So we have access to millions of articles, but you cannot get into those articles because they are either not well metadata, or not in your catalog, or not, or like hard to be catalogs in the proper way. So if AI can do that for us, it will be brilliant. It will save a lot of our time and money. So I'm just going to show you a tutorial for this tool. It's not going to take a long time. So just to give you a brief what's happening. So by the way, ANIF is developed by the National Library of Finland, and it's open source. You can download it and you can edit it and you can play with it as much as you want. So in this tutorial, the presenter is going to take a Wikipedia page and put it on the ANIF software, and ANIF will create subject heading automatically to it. And you can see how quickly and efficient is that. I'm just going to forward to the part that I want to show you. Yes, here. Okay, so here the presenter is copying a page from the National Library of Finland Wikipedia.
On the right, there is a menu for selecting a project. I select a TF-IDF project. The suggestions can be fetched by clicking this button. Here are the suggested subjects. Each label acts as a web link to the URI, and the bars visualize the scores that ANIF assigns to the suggestions. The maximum number of shown suggestions can be selected with these buttons. There is also a link to the interactive documentation of the API. The documentation shows some details of the methods of the ANIF API.
So just to brief up what we have seen is that it actually took few seconds for the ANIF software to found legitimate subject heading for the article that he put. Put that in mind why we are exploring the next project. The next project that I want to share with you, it's a research done by our colleague at Montana State University and University of North Florida, where they were trying to automatically cataloging scholarly article using the Library of Congress subject heading. That's also not a new research, and I assume that it has been now advanced, but it's an interesting piece of article if you get a chance to read it as well. So what they are trying to do here, they want to get over the challenge of like, is it possible to automatically catalog and put a Library of Congress subject heading automatically to a scholarly article. They did that, they scrapped the internet, they got some keywords, and then they put that keyword into a software, and the software predicted the library subject heading for it, and they did a nice case study. At the end, they actually the result was that there is a way that we can predict the library subject heading for scholarly articles. So this means that you are saving tons of time of librarian time, and you are saving a lot of, and you're actually making those articles that was never available, would never be available on the internet, or your library catalog to your users, which is what we wanted to do as an information specialist anyway. This is another software called Cloud Matrix, and it is a smart libraries system which can do a lot of things that normally information specialist librarian does, like user management, unregistered user alarm, unregistered user alarm, check in, check out. I'm going to show you the short videos that demonstrate what information services in the future might look like with the help of AI. So as you just saw, for most of the information services, like not information, like for the circulation disk duties can be automatically done by computer or by software. You're just using AI. The only thing that I am really having mixed feeling in this area, because again, like we as an academic library, we did a lot with the students who are like 16, 17 and teenagers, that how much we want to give away of their information, biometric information and other stuff. So that's a question for probably another time. So let's move forward for the upcoming another interesting tool that is actually kind of breakthrough in library search. So that's kind of an AI, but library search. So if you think of it, it's a generative AI, but it is customized to your collection, which is different than generative AI and different than normal Google search, because like most of us are very frustrated when it comes to, if you're looking for a book and you open Google search and you put the title of the book in the Google search, the first thing that will come up is that book available to buy through Amazon, let's say, or through probably Amazon. And it could be available for you just next door, like the library next door. But the way that the library search and the way the capability of MARC that we can talk about another time is actually the reason why our metadata is not the first thing that you should see when it comes to search through Google. But anyway, this AI library search tool is customizable to your library need and to your library catalog. We are all seeing this type of customer who can come and ask you like, I just don't remember the title, but I remember that the title have a red cover. That new AI library search can help you find this out. And I'm just going to show you this video, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
Introducing Talpa Search, a magical new AI-powered library search. Talpa uses the power of new technologies and the trust and authority of library data to return books and other media from your library's collection. Talpa is best for "what's that book?" questions. Let's say you've been wanting to read that book where a boy is stuck on a boat with a tiger, but you cannot remember the title. Talpa can find it, The Life of Pi. What about that movie with the six-fingered man? Talpa returns the movie and the book. Looking for something broader, like alien invasion movies or novels about World War II in France? Talpa does that too. Talpa even offers a way to answer those everlasting, "I know it had a blue cover" type questions with an innovative cover search. Ask for time travel romance with a blue cover, and it finds Outlander, among many other titles. Ask for thriller with Mona Lisa on the cover, and it finds the Da Vinci Code. Talpa is currently being tested out in libraries around the world and is already gaining great feedback. To learn more about how it all works, or to try it out for yourself, go to talpa.ai.
So what is interesting about this is that like someone could like, oh, I can just Google it. I don't have I don't need this type of tool in my library catalog. But actually, if you are at the library and you want to find if the library has it, it's much efficient, and it gives our patron a tool that much needed at the moment, for specifically when we are dealing with Gen Z, where they are used to have everything at the tip of their hand. So other ways that we can use AI in library, that research I really encourage you guys to read as well. It's called Sensory in Library Space at SMU Libraries. Where actually they included what is called heat map, and heat map can tell you which area in the library are more crowded and more busy than other area of the libraries. That is a brilliant tool that can give you a visualization and a real-time data visualization of your library space. You can, if there is let's say a library space that's empty most of the day, maybe you need to investigate why this area area is always empty, maybe the chairs are not comfortable. So it can make you think differently about the library space, which is a huge asset for any library now, because we know that libraries is very important. And again, the data is now we are in the age of data. Like this is the real gold. The data is the real gold. Where like if it is any data that you can get out of the library of your library, that is your huge and biggest assets. So that is one other way, that one other article that you probably might be interested to read. Very, very helpful. Some other tools that AI is used in libraries already is AR and VR, which is, if you are working in a medical library, for an example, there is this article from the IFLA about the use of AI in AR, augmented reality in medical libraries, when you can just hover your mobile phone over the sculpture of a human being, and then it can tell you what exactly you're looking for. And the other side, and the other half of the slide, you see that you can just with your tablet put it up, and an AR can tell you which side of the library and you're looking for, which subject are you looking at. And also it can answer the question that we get most, which is where's the bathroom. As well, can tell the patron where exactly they can see where is the location in the library. It's very, very helpful. I think it's underutilized software. It's not new, but it's very helpful when it comes to user services. When we want to talk more about is robotics in libraries, there is plenty of projects using robotics in libraries, but this one is very interesting. It's called, I think it's from a university in UAE. I would be mistaking, I'm not sure, was it Dubai or Abu Dhabi? But anyway, the information is in the link below. And they have used what's called the telepresent robot in library, which can give remote services, which we can give virtual programming. It can actually do some collaborative meeting in places. Let's say if there is a rural area and that you want to give some presentation or like some reach out, you can definitely do this service remotely using robotics. And again, very useful tool that you can use in libraries. And for me, what I have the most area that is most needed robotics is the user help for special needs, whether specifically specifically children libraries. Let's talk like children with autistic needs or something like that, where the robots is not going to get tired or frustrated if they repeated the same thing over and over and over again, unlike human, which we get frustrated if we are dealing with someone who needs special needs, and we tend to get sometimes frustrated, and unlike the robots. So it's very helpful as well in this area of library words and user services. Another robotics used in library, which is again another article that's been written by Yi Chin, and it's in Singapore Public Library, one of the National Library Board as well, one of the very front libraries in terms of adapting to technology, and they have adopted this robotic journey back starting 2013, which is crazy. But that robot can do shelf reading, can find mistakes in the shelf, and some can as well do some drop of the book to locations. So let's say you are sitting in the side and the east side of the campus, and the robot can actually drop the book for where are you. So that's again another way of thinking how you can better serve our community and our users. So just to be in time, move to the next part of our presentation, when we need to learn more about those technology. Now it's time to learn about the new technology. So the second question, how would I learn about it? How I myself, Iman, even learn about any of this new technologies that's happening in AI, in libraries and AI. First, resources, Library Association. I listed some, but there's plenty, specifically if you have local library association, make sure that you are registered to it to get all of the news about the technologies, trends, the webinar that they do, and toolkits, library journals as well, library guides. Many libraries around the world are actually customizing library guides for their needs and for the community needs and for the student and staff. So please as well take a look at that. Listserv, one of the listserv that I recommend is good for libraries. And also if you are a new librarian, you can just ask professional librarian or Reddit. Conference, workshops, online courses, webinar like the one that we are at the moment is also very helpful to keep yourself on top of what's happening in the field. Some online courses are actually for free. So things like in Coursera, Udemy, MIT OpenCourseWare, and edX. Okay, so what kind of basic technology is going to be helpful if you are new in this field? You need basic AI and data literacy. That's my recommendation. Just probably you already have that through your education, but if you can strengthen that, that's very important. Again, I cannot stress on that enough. This is the area or the age of data, so the data is very important. So the people who has the skills to deal with data are probably would be the most successful one. Understanding the basic concept of AI, what is machine learning, what is natural language processing, because that will help you in understanding how you would be able to do the prompt engineering or like ask ChatGPT the right question to give you the right answer. If you understand that as well, that's very helpful. Again, you also need to know how basic application happens, things like, ChatGPT recommendation system, in order to fix some bugs that happens in it. Specifically, if you get a frustrated customer, like, why your database never recommends something that's in my interest. Then if you have like a basic information about that's happening, you probably know where the bug is. Again, data literacy, and most importantly, ethical use of AI. That's very important. Cannot stress on that enough. Make yourself familiar with ALA principles on intellectual freedom and ethical use of technology. Again, if you can code, please do. Basic Python will really help you in order to be able to collaborate with IT or digital humanities team as a librarian. Probably we will be more working with other colleagues in the future than we used to do in the past. And finally, I think that my conclusion is that we are not going to be replaced by a machine. It's actually helping us doing better job, giving our customer better services. Again, we can use this tool to help make our software and our resources available in much better way. It probably will make us more into data stewards and AI ethics and the digital literacy leaders than before. And again, so the future of library with AI is not less human. That's how I see it as well. It's more powerful and relevant and essential than ever. And here I will stop, and thank you so much for listening.
Iman, huge thanks for that, which was a masterclass in how librarians can address AI. So very many thanks indeed. We have got some questions now, and to the audience, could you keep the questions coming, please? But I'm just going to ask you one question, which is to pick up on your last point about AI empowering librarians. Don't you think even so that, and we've all heard about the cuts in jobs at libraries across the world, actually, even including America, which probably has the most money to spend on libraries. Don't you think there's a danger that senior management could be cynical about this and just think that the library could cut down staff even more if it uses AI?
Unfortunately, that's true. I've seen it before. So I will give you an example. Back in, I think I don't want to just give up my age, but like few years ago, when I was a little bit younger, we used to be, I was a cataloger, and we used to be like, you know, the hot shot of any of the librarians, like, you know, nobody, like, you know, we have our own cubicles, no one touches to speak with us, because we were like one of the assets for the library. They spend like, I don't know how many hours to train us, so when it comes to having a cataloger. And then back in that day, books came shelf ready for, like, you know, because vendors have been taking over doing the cataloging, and instead, so library did start less and less in-house cataloging in our libraries, and out of nowhere a lot of catalogers were been laid off. But the thing is, it's again, it's the market shifts. You just go from one area to the other. Most of those catalogers have either like worked in other either in the field with vendors, or shifted in the way, because if I'm not needed now, my skills not needed now, but probably we have a lot of skills that will be needed in other direction. Again, we have been forever the safeguard for making sure that there is an equitable access for our student, and so maybe that's what for our community. So maybe that's where we wanted to champion more, and not just on the technical things that will probably be replaced very, very soon.
Thank you. So
okay.
I'm going to ask you both these questions. I'll start with Andrew, because I will give you a bit of a break for a while, Iman. So the first question is, what is your view of the pace of the uptake of AI by academic libraries? And if I could just add to that, because Annika and I have done quite a lot of work on this, it is our perception that AI has been embraced most from the east, and then going west, it has been less embraced, particularly in Europe. We think Europe's pretty slow to pick up on it, whereas it's been embraced wholeheartedly in China and the Middle East. So Andrew, do you have a view on that?
That's quite a big question, because first of all, how do you define AI anyway? I focus on generative AI. Iman has talked about a range of technologies, including robotics, which have been explored over a period. I think you might be right that countries like China, Singapore have really been at the forefront of thinking how to adopt AI for things like creating metadata. Whereas there is a long tradition in the English-speaking world, in the West in general, of suspicion of technologies. And like society as a whole, we've got a lot of concerns. What I was trying to express in my talk, I suppose, is we do feel quite conflicted about, you know, the loss of human contact, the way it might affect learning, the way it might affect society, environment. So there tends to be more skepticism in these countries. But on the other hand, countries like America is obviously at the forefront of AI development. Nearly all the tools that are available in the UK, AI-based, are American tools.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even the basic technologies we use all the time, like, you know, Office to write, everything is American-based. So I think that a lot of investment has gone in from the American profession into developing AI. So I think there's a lot of sense of conflict, but also big drivers in that direction. So if we're in Europe, perhaps we're getting AI thrown at us from the West and the East simultaneously, whereas we remain, you know, the European stance on AI as a whole in the AI Act is to think about how to protect society. And that's not really the dominant perspective of the governments in either the USA or China.
Interesting, thank you. And Iman, from your perception, is it pretty well adopted in the Middle East?
I think probably AI kind of democratized the technology a little bit, because Again, I 100% agree with Andrew. USA made for sure, but again, I also gave us specifically in the Middle East and the global South an opportunity to present something on the table, whether it's like, you know, new way of using current algorithms or editing algorithm in a way or another that benefits specific part of the population. So I kind of think that it gave us in the Middle East, in the global South, an opportunity to present something to the world. Again, knowledge of how to code and understand coding and edit a code and stuff like which is not which is accessible to a majority of the population. But again, it does not give us access to the data which you need to train your model on, because most of this data are owned somewhere in warehouses, cloud-based, that we do not have access to. But like, again, it gives you a way of like, okay, what else you can definitely do something, because it doesn't require a lot of money, which we lack in our communities, and it gives us and again, expertise. It's a new field, a lot of us are experimenting, so as well maybe the global South can present something new to the community in this area.
Thank you. So the next question, I think, is really two questions. And the first part of it is something I was going to ask you myself, which is, how does AI sit alongside the conventional content that publishers provide? In other words, is it going to drive publishers out of business? And secondly, do you have any experience of the AI applications that publishers and vendors have developed? And if so, what do you think about them? So Andrew, I'll ask you again. I hope that wasn't too complicated.
I'll have a go at that question. So I think what I was trying to summarize in some of that data at the beginning, and there's some studies of the UK of what people use generative AI for, and they seem to increasingly trust it for certain types of question, like just factual questions or doing some simple maths, and even some people trust it for, you know, support on identifying health issues. So I've got a feeling how information is used is changing. How does that affect publishers and authors? Well, that's of course a highly debated area. They're very fearful that basically AI, having kind of mined all the stuff they've created over the years, is now just going to chuck out the answers and even create new answers based on their original ideas and sort of displace them. But I doubt if that's going to happen, particularly from a library perspective. I think we've just got too many good resources that people really need to consult that AI hasn't got its grips on yet. So let's be optimistic that, you know, libraries, publishers still have an important role. Bit of a meandering answer, hopefully address some of the questions. Maybe I'll let Iman give her answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Iman.
Well, I probably do not have a good experience when it comes to how that can affect publishing and publications. But I only have just one comment in this area, which is what I'm afraid of is that now ChatGPT, for an example, and other generative AI tool, but let's focus on ChatGPT because it's the most used among our students. It's actually targeting students, so it gives like some kind of discounts at specific time of the year which students are due most of their assignments. And what I'm afraid of is that most of those students, what they do is that they actually upload their articles to ChatGPT, which means that we are training the software we are training the ChatGPT to be more accurate, more scientific, because they are now trained on data that they didn't have access before, because like the case was, again, it's OpenAI, was that they have just trained their system on publicly available information and data. But now in that area, we're like millions of students, we're talking about millions of students, of graduates, of undergrad students are using ChatGPT, like uploading all of this material. So this is where I think it might be more reliable in the future. But again, it's an LLM model, which is not like, it's just large language model, different than a normal search. I don't have an answer for this question, but I can just see that in the future things is going to a little bit be different than what we are used to.
Thank you. And I'm sorry to overwork you, but the next question's for you as well. Do you presently...
So can I just add a couple of things to the answer?
Yes, yes, sorry.
Yeah,
please do.
I remember the second part of your question. So
Yes.
Increasingly, publishers like Web of Science, Scopus have got these AI tools built in. So we're getting a complex environment where, you know, you get generative AI in that location. You've got these tools like Consensus, specialist tools for researchers, perhaps to do literature reviews. They've got generative AI built in. And we've got the large language models, but they're also offering deep research tools. I don't know if you've ever looked at the agents that, like Gemini now offers like a deep research tool that go off and do a literature review for you. So as a proliferation, I've got a feeling at some point it will stabilize and someone will win out. And historically, it seems like the publishers and the specialist research tools will win out over these general tools. But I agree with Iman really that things are changing. I suppose that's the key thing. It's very interesting, her comment about basically our students are training up these models, both with what they're uploading, but also their questions, what they're writing. And that's a problem I hadn't really thought of. I do think that is a problem we're going to face, that they will get better because we're basically training them for free. So.
Thank you. So, Iman, we have a question. Do you presently use ANIF, and did you have to train to use it, or did you just explore it as you went along?
No, I have not used ANIF myself. I do not need to use it at my current position, job. But I have a degree in data science, so that was not hard for me to go through. But anyway, even if you don't have, they have tons of tutorials on the internet. And again, this type of open access software, it's kind of a cloud source one, which means that we are all helping to develop it. So if you have the time and you have the capacity to do that, please go ahead and adapt it and change and keep sending them emails or messages about what can be done better. Because again, it's an open source, which means that you can have access to the code and have access to everything, which is not the case with ChatGPT or all other OpenAI or other sources. We don't know what's happening. We don't know the technology, so we can never compete with them. But any open source, I really highly recommend most of the time. But I personally, I have just played around with it, but I haven't used in my current job. If your institution is looking into it, I highly recommend that you can do that. And there is literally, just put ANIF on the YouTube. There's tons of tutorial. You don't need special training to be able to edit it.
Thank you. And this is also for you. I think it's quite a short question or short answer. Can Tulpa be integrated with the library catalogue?
that's what they are. That's what they are advertising. Yes. Thing about Talpa search is that it is customized to your library catalog. But again, it's not free. It comes with of course fees. And I haven't shared that just to promote, but like just to tell you what the future might look like if more and more of those type of tools are available. But yes, it is customizable, and you can reach out to the vendor and ask them if you want to have a customized version or try it for your library catalog.
Thank you. And this is a question for both of you, but I'll start with Andrew. I think what the questioner means here is, because the question is, can AI be used for a literature research? Well, of course it can, but I think what they mean is, can it be used for a meaningful literature research where you cover all the things that you need to cover, rather than just coming up with things that other people have asked about? So, Andrew, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, I think the answer is probably not yet. As I was trying to say, I suppose, you know, the publisher tools like on Scopus Web of Science, increasingly, at least if your library can afford to buy those extra services, you can get that support as part of your literature review. And then there's these specialist tools like Consensus. I'm not advertising them. That's the name that sticks in my mind. But there's lots of different tools that have emerged. And I just mentioned this deep research tool that I know ChatGPT's got, Gemini's got. It will do a literature review of sorts. But I've done a bit of road testing with both of those. And in both cases, they search, you know, even for an academic search, they basically search open web content primarily. It's relatively academic, but it's mostly also US and North American content, I noticed, was sort of privileged. So I think the answer is no. Of course, at the moment, of course, these tools can be helpful in supporting a literature review. So probably if you think about a literature review process, you want to scope out what search terms you want to use to search. Actually, I think that's actually one of the good applications of generative AI. Pretty good at coming up with lots of search terms that could help you search for information. If you want to summarize some papers, being careful about copyright and those issues, yeah, it can help you there. If you want to sort of organize your thoughts, it can be helpful. I think it's potentially, there's a range of tools out there, and that's part of the confusion, that there's loads of different kind of AI applications. They're always rapidly changing. It's very hard for libraries to give advice about which to use, how to use each one, and so forth. But there are helpful things out there. It'd be a bit foolish of us to deny that many users will want to use them. And the final point I'll make is it depends a bit on the area of application. So if I was a lawyer or I was working in health, I don't think I would rely too much on these things. If I was a student, doing an undergraduate degree maybe, where I think, well, a good enough answer is okay, then I think I'll be quite tempted that it's offering quite a lot of help with the whole process of thinking about how to do the literature review to writing it up. It's going to help me all along the way. The problem that we have to put into people's mind is, well, how accurate is it? Have you really checked that those citations that it's come up with actually exist? Have you reflected on what are the skills you're losing because you're getting technology to do part of the process for you? Often these tools are sold to you. It's like, oh, it'll speed up what you do. It'll take away the boring tasks. I'm not sure for us, someone like me who likes doing research, reading stuff's the interesting bit of doing research. Why are you taking away? I want to read things carefully. I don't want it to be summarized for me. So we're being told that certain tasks are boring by the technology companies, but actually, are they boring, or are they the whole point? When you're reading something really carefully, that's when you can be super critical. And I think the idea of close reading is like a key one, isn't it, to education? And we should be sticking up for that. So it'd be foolish to deny that many students will be using AI to help them with their literature reviews. We've got to acknowledge.
Comment, Andrew, you've got some claps for that.
Oh, okay. I mean, it'd be foolish to deny that they are using it, but we need to educate them to use it in a thoughtful, appropriate way, working with colleagues who do teaching and so forth. That would be my feeling.
Thank you. And Iman, would you like to add anything to that?
That was brilliant, Andrew. Honestly, there is some tools that's available for literature review. Generative AI, absolutely not one of them. Generative AI is not a tool for search. Let's put it this way: it's a large language model. What it does, it just predicts the next word. That's why you can see a lot of made up recommendation, a citation come out of it. So if you want to use their AR, like some of them, like linked paper, Anara.ai, there is another one called Rabbit Search, and there's tons of those that's available. Personally, I have tried them all because I do I give students away and information what is available for them as a tool. I can confidently say that none of them is helpful when it comes to finding a good, thorough information literacy. Yes, it will for the literature review. Probably it will give you a mediocre list of what's there. Honestly, even Google search is not good enough for me. So I don't know how. Google Scholar, I mean, it's not good enough tool for me when it comes to lit review, because there is nothing like your library databases. There is nothing like speaking with the professional themselves. They will tell you exactly which authors that you should look for. And so basically those AI tools, for me, I think they are so far not there. Again, for me, even Google Scholar, which is powered by the university, it's not good enough. It does not give you what's all available for you. It does not give you what is there. Doesn't give you a good literature review. So for me, if you want to do a good literature review, ask the faculty that you are working with, the expert in the field, and again, go to the reference list and read and figure out what you want to read next from there. This is probably the best way. The second thing, which is actually everything costs a lot of money. Like all of the examples that I gave, takes $10, $20, $30 out of your pocket every month, and who would be able to pay all of that to do a literature review? And even it doesn't do a good job. It literally do mediocre job. So when it comes to literature review, generative AI off the table. Don't even try it. It will totally get you the wrong way. But there's some other tools. Try connected paper. It's not bad. Anara AI also is not bad. But again, mediocre work. Do the job. Do your reading or ask the professor.
Thank you. And Andrea, this one is for you. Are library schools adapting the syllabus to train future librarians and information professionals about AI?
Yes, of course. Sometimes when people talk about library schools or information schools, as we call ourselves now, they remember what they were taught and think, hang on, that's out of date. But the reality is, I think our courses are pretty up to date. We include a lot of things like the latest issues around AI, decolonizing the curriculum, the well-being and academic libraries. I think our curriculums are pretty up to date. I think what we're training people to be is lifelong learners who have got some understanding of the culture of librarianship. so they can go away, they can get up to speed quickly, but they're participating in a profession that's been around for a long time. There's a lot of wisdom there. So our curriculums, I do believe, are pretty up to date. We try and cover the latest topics.
Thank you. And this one, I think, is for both of you again. As AI tools work on probability and statistical tools, can they create an unwanted shift from value-based scientific research to popularity-based superficial knowledge? Iman, would you like to start with that?
Could you just repeat the question again?
Sorry.
No worries.
As AI tools work on probability and statistical tools, can they create an unwanted shift from value-based scientific research to popularity-based superficial knowledge?
Absolutely, they can. If enough users are using, let's say, generative AI tools, so we are to expect a new generation with, again, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's why that is very important for academics like Andrew and for librarians to champion the right way to do things. You do not be creating a new superficial community where the ethics and behavior and the correct right tool and information is not used. We were discussing when the thing was with my colleague the other day, where we talked about like how ChatGPT are now creating novels and now creating poems and now creating art, which I think if there is one area AI should not be entering, it would be that, because this is a human production to the word, and it's very important that we keep it this way. And also, one time I was attending one of the art exhibition that was all created by Midjourney. So for me, I think we're there, and people are enjoying this art. So if the new generation, everybody is adopting this way of living, absolutely, we're expecting a different future. But we also have to fight that. We might want to make sure, like, no, yeah, we need our talent, we need our creativity, and we need our human side of production and creation. So I absolutely 100% unfortunately agree with the statement.
Thank you. Andrew, I'm going to ask you the next question, which is kind of related to that, rather than asking you to take that one as well. So can AI harm the science in the way social media harmed arts and turn attention from artists to celebrities? Will AI water down the real scientific discoveries to attract trivia? I mean, that is actually a leading assumption that social media has harmed the arts. But anyway, if you wouldn't mind taking that one, thank you.
Yeah, I can try and respond to that. I mean, I think in the scientific context, AI is being used in a wide range of ways. I referred there to in my talk to a bit of research that says, well, AI can be used in very powerful ways to combat climate change in terms of managing complex systems, predicting dangerous weather events, managing the response to that. I think AI in science is probably being used as a whole, AI as a whole is probably being used quite effectively. Generative AI in science is possibly a little bit of a red herring in that, because of those things about replicability, confidentiality and so forth, I'm not sure too many scholars are going to be putting their data into generative AI tools. Although it appears to be good at analysis, when you look closely at it, it's not that replicable. I know some scholars will agree with me. So I've got a colleague here, Mike Thelwall, who's done a lot of research in this kind of area, and he's found generative AI can be quite effective, for example, at doing peer review of academic publications. So again, there's another possible way that AI can fit into the scholarly communication system. So I think, so overall what I'm saying really is, yeah, there's some things that are eroding quality in science, such as the pressure to publish, things like that. I'm not sure, I think AI on the whole, AI, broadly speaking, is probably quite powerful and really benefiting a lot of areas of science, kind of accelerating knowledge creation. It's got its risks, and we know, we've seen in journals papers that have been published that are basically, generated by AI, and have had to be retracted, those kind of things. But I think on balance, AI is probably positive for science.
Thank you. And this one is also for you, but I'll ask Iman to take it after you. You mentioned AI bias. Does this exist in recommendations in libraries? For example, would AI promote a certain school of thought over others, such as traditional versus revisionist history? And what impact would this have on students?
Yeah, the nature of bias is a tricky one. So probably all systems have bias. Human systems definitely have bias. If we look at the decolonizing agenda, we realize that libraries have actually historically collected bias collections that reinforce particular viewpoints, like those of white males over global south perspectives and so forth. So bias definitely exists in libraries. We'd be struggling to deal with that, and I think we've made good strides in that. AI is definitely going to be biased depending on what data it's trained with. So we've got these large language models. Yeah, the designers have tried to put in guardrails for AI not to say really stupid things and really racist or discriminatory things. But I think the bias is still there embedded in them because the data that's been used to train them is biased, and indeed the people who built the systems are pretty biased. So yeah, I think that's my view of the nature of bias. Can we build? But the positive story, I suppose, about bias in AI is that there's no reason why, every reason to believe you could build AI systems with biases that you approved of or that had a good balance of perspective. The danger of AI is that we don't see the bias very clearly. So we may be doing searches and we get, all these white male authors from countries like mine, telling us what the world is about. That's not that obvious that bias is there. We need to, that's a big part of information literacy, I think, and AI literacy is like to raise people's awareness of what bias really looks like and make them ask critical questions. And the more they depend on AI just to do their reading for them, the less likely they are to have that sort of critical awareness.
Thank you. And Iman, do you endorse that?
Well, I think I will quickly answer the bias question, and because I am aware that we only have 5 minutes left. So there is two ways that anything can be biased, any software can be biased: the data that we are training the software on, and the engineer who is building the algorithm. So let's say, like, just a hypothetical example, I have a lot of money, $1 trillion, and I gave it to OpenAI, and I said, like, hey, highlight this type. Whenever someone searches, let's say I'm like producing a type of milk. If anybody search this type, just recommend that. That can happen, absolutely, because as a software engineer, I can do that. Whether the decision would do it or not, absolutely, I have no idea. Like the Silicon Valley, where there's different. I have no idea what's going on there. But like we have seen it, we have seen Facebook meddling in many things in the past and in the future. We have seen how they segmented the communities. They can segment people from like specific location and target ads for whatever. That can definitely happen. But generally, when it comes to bias, we already have a biased LLM model. We already have biased generative AI. Like how the LLM models are trained, it's by the whatever is on the internet, and whatever is on the internet, it's either European centric or American centric. Like so, most of the other languages are not there, and unfortunately as well, men centric or like because women. Information on publication are not as heavily existed on the internet as men, so we have already a biased LLM models and a biased AI in general. So that's why I always say that it's very important for like the people in the global south and the people who are speaking different language and women and everybody who are marginalized to speak up and start to produce something on the table now that can help and mitigate this risk of like being marginalized and generally, because like it's coming very strong, and we need to stand against it. So there's a lot of things, like there is feminist AI there is a lot of organization working again and in order to protect the communities. And again, the most important part for me is that students, because those I work with a lot of times. So I think it's very important as well to draw a line so that we are not putting our students and our freshmen and 16 years old in a danger zone and expecting them to find their way out. Again, I don't want them to be segmented. I don't want them to be denied access to specific information just because of their age or because where they are. But it is there, and unfortunately.
Thank you. I'm going to have to, that was very eloquent. Thank you, Iman. I'm going to have to cut you off now because, as you say, we've only got 1.5 minutes left. Thank you both for one of the most stimulating webinars and deep thinking webinars that we've ever had, I think. Thank you so much for your eloquence and sharing your thoughts, which have been gathered over many years, I know, and with a great deal of work, and you're getting loads and loads of claps and thumbs up now. So huge thanks from De Gruyter Brill and from all the audience. It remains to me to thank the audience and to say I hope you'll come to the next webinar, which is at the beginning of December, and as Andrea said, it is on libraries in the community.